Hey, the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization, doing great stuff all around the state. This is the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm Craig Fahle. Thank you very much for being with me on this glorious Friday in Detroit. Joining me, as usual, we have Nancy Derringer, the mellifluous tones of Nancy Derringer.
Mellifluous.
From Deadline Detroit.
It's a little muggy out there. I would not say this is a glorious day, but that's
pretty
okay.
nice out there.
It's pretty
and of course,
good.
Alan Langle, our fearless editor,
Hello.
is here as well,
Hello,
and
hello.
founder of Deadline Detroit.
Back from New York City.
So thank you very much. And between us, I was trying to figure out this mathematically speaking. I don't really want to talk about it, but there's got to be close to 80 years of experience between us. Maybe a little bit more. I'm on 26 myself or something like that. So
I think we can.
I don't think that stuff. I don't even think about.
We
that
don't
stuff
calculate that way.
in dog
We don't
years,
play
we're
that.
old.
We don't play that here.
But anyway, so we've seen a lot of things, but we have all agreed in recent weeks that we have never seen the likes of one Donald Trump.
No.
Well,
Well, unfortunately, we started seeing him in the mid '80s, and we just hope he would
that's
go
true.
away.
But,
I know.
But, you know, he was kind of harmless when he was building buildings with his name on it in New York and all that kind of stuff and, you know, hanging out at the Playboy Mansion and doing all that kind of stuff that he was doing back then.
Right.
You know, disco dancing while wearing his suit.
Yeah.
We've seen these videos, which are pretty funny.
I know.
A lot more serious this week. Robert Mueller, of course, gives his testimony.
I was wondering what we were transitioning into with that. I was going to do his white man's overbite when he pretends to dance.
That's what this looks like.
Yeah.
I've done it. I've been guilty of this
Everybody
myself.
does, yeah. Okay.
But
And?
this was much more serious. This is not the same freewheeling, you know, carefree dude. He's got a lot at stake here. Robert Mueller came out, and we'll talk a little bit about how everybody's covered sort of this. But the actual information that came out the other day, because nobody read the report. The vast majority of the public did not read
You
the
did.
report. Of
I
course,
did.
you and I did.
I think they were saying
That
even
was our job.
Christopher Wray, the FBI
He said, well, I
director.
skimmed it.
Yeah,
he
skimmed it.
skimmed it.
That's unbelievable.
But you listen to it, and everybody's talking about whether or not he did a good job or a bad job. And we'll get into that in just a little bit, because I think that is something
so
to talk about.
frustrating.
But what we did here is basically he said, no, there was no exoneration of this guy. There was some shady stuff in here. And frankly, he could potentially be indicted when he leaves office.
Right.
And if anybody was really paying attention beyond the first 3 hours of this, in the second 3 hours, I thought were very, very productive when it came down to getting into the nitty-gritty of what the Russians were trying to do to the election and how complicit
And are
these
still
people were in
trying
it.
to do
Well,
to our
exactly.
elections. That's the scary stuff. I mean, well, go on.
Well, but I guess my question is, there was some stuff in there that should make everybody sort of take pause and say, regardless of whether or not you think he should be impeached over this stuff or he should get in any trouble or resign, whatever you think, there's some stuff in there that we should all be looking at saying, this is inappropriate behavior for any candidate going forward. We need to
course it
stop
is.
this, do we not?
Of
Well,
course
you know,
it
it's
is.
interesting. The New York Times just had a story called Mueller's Skepticism of Trump's Truthfulness Heightens Impeachment
I
Debate.
read that this morning.
And that isn't, an issue, surprisingly, that really hasn't come up much. But Mueller basically said some of his answers in writing were
Not
not
truthful.
truthful.
That would be-
which is called perjury.
Which is exactly what tripped up Bill
Clinton had two perjury, I think, charges.
Sure.
I mean, it's loaded with that. I mean, it's so insane because I'm friends with some retired FBI agents on Facebook, and we get into debates, and it's just mind-boggling how they don't care. And for guys who were enforcing the law all the time, now they're like, yeah. Basically, who cares? It's over, It's and the interesting, I thought it was so funny because one of the Ohio Congress members kept going on
Jim Jordan.
no, it wasn't Jim Jordan. It was another one talking about exoneration, and he's saying, well, Mr. Mueller, you can't exonerate him, and the Attorney General, there is no legal term for exonerating, and a jury doesn't exonerate. They just say guilty or not guilty, and then here it is. Trump says, I'm exonerated. Yeah. You know.
Well, and it's just, but the whole thing that he's been saying all along is basically that, look, there's no collusion and no obstruction. I've been totally exonerated. And Mueller came out of his face and said, that's not at all what we found.
I know. However, that requires
I
at
don't know.
least 3 to 10 brain cells to rubbing together up in your skull to grasp the difference between that. And I'm convinced that, there are just people who don't pay enough attention to the news, and they just hear, exoneration.
Part of it, though, is, and I wanted to get to this because I looked at the coverage, right? The stuff that was
my
coming out
God.
immediately
It was
after
awful.
it.
Yes.
I mean, so Politico came out. I talked about this on my podcast yesterday. Politico came out and called it a dud performance, even though
Right.
we knew what we were going to get.
Yes.
Robert Mueller's not the
He
type that's going to
said-
get out there with a
Chuck
top hat and
Todd-
start dancing,
Right.
Yeah. Chuck Todd
He-
did that thing. He's just, the optics were terrible. And it's like, there are many people in the world who understand just how dire our situation is right now and are not looking for entertainment like you are, like you apparently are. These people who divide everything in Washington as a game. It's like, this side, that side, who's up, who's down, who won the week.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Who won the week? And I'm done with that. And
It's interesting. I mean, the Congress was waiting for Mueller to say, yes, he should be indicted.
Right, yeah.
And he's laid it out as best as he can. And Congress, it's up to Congress at this point. The expectations were ridiculous. I mean, Mueller, right from the beginning, his opening statement was he basically submitted his report. He indicated that he wasn't going to go beyond the four corners of the report, and he did a little bit. But nonetheless, and people said, "Oh, he came off as an old man." Colbert was saying last night. He was saying, "Well, I testified, or maybe it was the night before." He says, "I testified before Congress," and he goes, "Guess what?" He goes, "You can't hear where the person is coming from. So sometimes it'd be like, Mr. Mueller, I'm over here."
Yeah, and this is a
Right.
big table, and you're sitting there in that table
Yeah.
in front. There's people that are going around in a semicircle.
Right.
There's
It's hard.
photographers. There's everything. Yes.
And I posted this on Facebook during the anthrax case. Like for 4 years, Stephen Hatfield, a scientist who was a person of interest, was suing the government, the Justice Department, FBI, for leaking information in the case. And I participated in an 8-hour deposition where they were trying to find out who my sources were. And I never gave them up, and I never gave a clue. But you have to listen to every word so carefully because they're trying to trick you. They'd be like, well, this person here in the story that you cite as a source, did they answer the phone directly or did a secretary?
Yeah, they're just trying to find. They're
And I'd be
basically
like,
that's an actual witch hunt. They're trying to find out where the witch is in the office.
I might answer it, or they'd be like, well, how long have you known this person?
That gives them
you-"
how long this person's been
Right.
working.
So
there.
if somebody who's been in the bureau for 3 years, they go, well, it can't be them, or it could be them. And so it's a very intense and tiring process, and you have to listen. You can't daydream. You have to listen to every single word, and particularly the press is waiting to blow up. They need a headline. They're waiting for anything for you to say.
Well, Nancy, you and I talked about this yesterday. The headline that ticked me off the worst was one that was in, I believe, USA Today, and of course, that's the parent company, Gannett. That's their flagship, and a lot of their content ends up in the Detroit Free Press these days. But it popped up on my phone where it said, Bob Mueller said, what was the word that he said a lot? Could you repeat the question? And Twitter took notice.
Yeah, and
I was
Twitter
like,
took notice. Yeah,
So,
who
okay,
cares?
some people were tweeting about the fact that he wasn't answering the questions or needed to have the questions repeated to him.
Right.
I thought to myself, what kind of analysis is this?
Well,
I have seen very few
brainless.
articles.
It's a brainless
with the
analysis,
With
yeah.
the exception of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and a couple of the bigger political websites like The Hill and places like that, and the Wall Street Journal. Actually, we're analyzing the answers that he gave and talking about whether or not this is something new here. And there is something new. Again, the hint that the answers that the president gave in writing to Robert Mueller may have been less than truthful.
Right.
Is something that was new.
yeah.
Right.
And that was, frankly, as far as I'm concerned,
Yes.
that's a bombshell because that is now pushing the Democrats to think about whether or not they actually move to impeach this guy.
Right.
And that debate's getting weird.
And
is
it's funny.
kinda
It's
weird.
funny that Trump was so worried, and his lawyers were so worried about him actually being interviewed live because he was going to perjure himself because he's
incapable of telling the
incapable of telling the truth
Right.
on a consistent basis. And so here it
On a
is.
consistent basis. You need a caveat for this guy on that one.
and here it is in writing. They still submit stuff that's untruthful. And I'm sure he was telling his lawyers, yes, this is the case. And then they had evidence saying, no, that was not the case, that Trump did know about WikiLeaks dumps prior to the dumps happening, and apparently probably from Roger Stone.
Not to bring up, not to change the subject too much. I just want to pivot like 10 degrees here. And not to bring up another New York Times story because, of course, that's failing New York Times, and they have a 10-article limit.
Fake news.
Fake news. They have a 10-article limit if you're not a subscriber, and we're late in the month. So, some people may not be able to read this. However, they had a story today that said the Russians in 2016 sought to penetrate election systems in all 50 states. All 50 states. These people are not screwing around. They are serious, and they're going to do it. And it was Mueller said. He said they're doing it now. They're going to do it again. They're going to keep trying. Well, and what the hell are we doing about it? Nothing.
Well, Trump doesn't any acknowledgement of that. He feels
right.
like it cheapens.
He legitimizes
it
his
cheapens
rousing
his
victory.
But
right.
Mitch McConnell has the power to bring that up for a vote in the Senate.
He won't do it.
They've rejected some of the bills addressing that.
Mitch McConnell's looking
if it
like
helps
beyond Donald
if
Trump,
it
right?
helps Republicans, they don't care, and that is freaking dangerous.
Well, this
buddy.
could switch around any time soon.
I know.
It's one of those things. Look, and everybody's like, well, what did the Russians gain by doing this? Well, anytime we're divided makes us a little bit less willing to take unified action against
I feel
a foe.
I feel like Sidney Pollack in Michael Clayton. What are they doing? They're doing it. I mean, they have divided the country. Half the country hates the other half of the country. NATO is weakened. Our international standing has gone from the top of the pyramid to somewhere down in the middle. This guy, we have a clown for a president. I mean, come on. I mean, what do you think? What do they have to gain? They're gaining everything.
Well,
so,
and see, you got to take that call. Go ahead, take that call. All right, if it's important, you can step away. Yeah, that's right.
They want to sell me an extension on my car warranty.
But this one guy said to me, he's like, well, why would they want Trump to win as opposed to? And he was arguing about this. Why would they want Trump to win? I said, well, because Hillary was very, very, anxious to make sure that the Magnitsky Act stayed in place.
Yes.
And people are like, well, what's the Magnitsky Act? Well, okay, this is a really, really important law that was passed
the 12th
in the Obama
New York
administration.
That you have to read.
In 2012 that passed that basically froze the assets of people that were involved in human rights violations. And there are a whole number of Russian oligarchs that invested in companies that were doing really, really bad things. Their assets have been frozen in Western banks. Other countries have followed suit, done the same thing. In fact, there's going to be an EU-wide Magnitsky Act pretty soon, which basically means that all these billionaires in Russia have all of their assets frozen. They can't access it, including
they can't get to their house in the south of France.
Putin, because Vladimir Putin's money is not in his name. It's in a lot of these other guys' names because the reason they have this money is because he allowed them to basically raid and pillage.
Right.
And therefore, they want their money back. And the Trump administration was willing to listen to them about softening the Magnitsky Act to allow them access to their cash. And if you don't think a bunch of rich guys, billions of dollars, is what's at stake here, that's exactly what it's about.
It's exactly what it's about.
It's interesting, too, just to jump back.
It's not the only thing, but that's a big part of it.
Yes.
A little bit about the whole hacking and all that stuff is that come to realize that the real war, countries that are lesser, like, that are they have the internet now. They don't need a nuclear weapon.
Right.
The war is on that platform right now, and it's serious. I mean, they can shut down our electric grids. They can do a lot of stuff, and they don't need a nuclear bomb to get on the even.
Right. No, they don't. They need great
now.
hackers, and they have some of the best hackers in the world.
So in a bizarre, though, twist, right? And given the fractious nature of our politics and how angry everybody is at each other, they still worked out a budget deal, which nobody's real excited about, but it's a 2-year budget deal.
They lifted the debt ceiling again,
exactly.
which if Obama tried, oh my gosh, they were going to shut down the government.
Well, and of course, it's funny now seeing people who say, well, deficits don't matter. The same people that a couple of years ago said deficits are awful. But, getting that out of the way was kind of a big deal. So Nancy Pelosi found a way to actually get this deal done with Donald Trump on the budget. And so maybe in a weird way, it's not completely dysfunctional, but nobody wants this in the way of next year's election. That just would foul things up too badly. So, I mean, are we going to see any more cooperation, or is this pretty much the only thing they're going to get done?
I think it depends on the impeachment
I'm still
thing.
Waiting on infrastructure.
It's infrastructure week. Week after next.
The Democrats are wrestling with the impeachment thing, and it's like there's part of the party that says, "What are you waiting for? How can you let this president get away with it?" The other half says, "Screw it. we'll just beat them in 2020. It's going to be too big of a distraction or whatever. Some of the senators are saying, we can still, I mean, they can dream, but they say, hey, if we have enough evidence, maybe we could get enough votes, you can get some people to change over. And, it's possible, but who knows?
Well, hey, you talked about let's switch gears off of Washington for just a little bit because we don't know what's going to happen with that.
I can feel my blood
We'll talk about the
pressure
Democrats
rising.
next week because they're all going to be here for that debate. So we'll get into the Democrats next week. They're all going to be in Detroit at the Fox Theater for 2 nights of
it's
debates.
So much fun.
Like I said, as I said last week, a Democrat party. Nothing like boogieing with Pete Buttigieg.
Boogieing with Buttigieg.
There you go. Pete Boogie Judge. Maybe that's what we call him now. So we'll get into that next week. But you talked about being able to disrupt the power grid. Apparently, the wind does that pretty well around here. We just had 600,000
It
customers.
was more like 800,000.
600 is what I think I read this morning,
maybe
but it was a
like that.
lot.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
like the second highest number we've had in a long
Quite a lot.
time. Those storms that came through here,
820,000.
I don't know.
it was a
whatever.
lot.
It was a lot. Yeah.
And a lot of people just got their power back on like yesterday. And some, I think, might still be out. I haven't checked
There
the
were some
outage
traffic lights that were out like 2 days ago.
But this is a struggle. Not for just DTE, but the people that are dealing with it. But
Look,
wow, of course, Public Service Commission is going to look into their response to the outage.
Right.
And people are saying they're getting false estimates on when it was going to happen. This is a big problem we've got here.
And it's like you can't control the weather. You can't control the weather. There are a lot of standing rotten trees in this community. We've had a lot of problems on like that. The ash stuff and everything else. You can't control that. Trees are going to fall. They're going to take down wires. It's like everything. It's how do you respond to it, and how do you treat people in that. And when when you've got when people are being given wrong restoration times, I just think you have to be honest.
Well, and I think you have to be very conservative in your estimates because if you
yeah.
tell them it's going to be, hey, it's going to be Thursday at 2 and it comes on Wednesday at like 11:30 p.m.
Yeah, then it's
people
like,
are like, oh, it's early,
yeah.
yay!
Yay,
So it's
DTE.
about managing expectations, I guess.
It's like taking a flight. The flight never
We're gonna
takes
be
as long
pulling in
as
a couple of minutes
you know,
early.
you take a flight to New York or something.
Yeah.
Let's say 2 hours, and then you get there an hour and a half, and you're like, yay!
You got a favorable tailwind, and we think we'll be pulling into LaGuardia 20 minutes early.
Yeah.
And I was like, woo!
But I was going to say,
Your luggage may not be, but hey.
Did you lose power?
infrastructure.
I did not. I
Okay.
did not. But I
not.
was actually helping out a friend and watching their cat, and there was no power at that place. So
Okay.
it was kind of difficult.
We flickered and we lost our internet for a while.
God
but
forbid.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God! First world problem.
I know. Talk
Well,
about first world problems,
you
but it
know,
did
but-
come back.
But
so.
I was going to say that infrastructure is something that we don't address until there's a crisis.
Always.
Down in
Always.
New Orleans, Katrina, suddenly like, oh my God.
Maybe we should rebuild the levees.
Yeah, maybe we need to address that. And the same thing here. I mean, it's only until there's a crisis that people say, which is unfortunate because you can tell when the infrastructure is in need of repair, but it's always the last thing. To be.
Full disclosure, I mean, I'm working with DTE on a project. I need to tell people that. I mean, and tree trimming is this one thing that they're trying to get done. They can't find enough. But you could prevent a lot of this stuff if the trees were maintained properly, because we built power lines behind houses in Metro Detroit all those years ago. In a lot of places, you can't bury the lines because it's all clay and garbage underneath it.
Right, sure.
So we're going to be stuck with this for a while. But every time one of those tree trimming companies comes through the neighborhood and they hack these trees, people are
it's
like,
oh no, the trees.
then it falls on your limb. So they're kind of between a
Damn
rock and a
trees.
hard
They
place
really
on
are.
this one. But at the same time, they I think recognize they've got to do a better job of doing preventive maintenance on these things to stop this stuff from happening, because every time a storm with 50, 60 mile an hour winds comes through, this stuff happens.
And there are more of them because of the Chinese hoax that's happening. So we're gonna have stronger thunderstorms, more rain.
Oh, the Chinese hoax. Okay.
Yeah, I was talking about
climate change.
Climate change.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I call it the Chinese hoax sometimes.
Yeah,
it's a Friday. I
you threw
like to
me
be a
for
little
second.
levity. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole point of this show, is to
Yes.
have a little levity.
Exactly.
But that was a big issue this time around. All right. We had a couple of disturbing incidents that happened in Detroit this week. And shootings in Detroit and violence in Detroit, these are not new things. Nope. They are not. But we had a situation where a fender bender accident at about 2 o'clock in the morning led to one person dying. You had another situation where you had a guy who stole some potato chips. The store owner decides to fire a weapon at the guy, but ends up hitting an innocent bystander over a bag of chips. And
I think multiple bags.
yeah, well,
Well, that changes everything.
No,
Were they
no,
Funyuns?
I'm kidding.
Were they Doritos?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but seriously, we are just seeing some senseless, stupid acts of violence, and I mean, our conflict resolution skills are nil in this
Right.
day and age, and I'm trying to figure out what's at the root of
I mean,
this.
it's interesting. I mean, with the store owner, or clerk or whatever, I'm sure the frustration is there, but we have to put in perspective that shoplifters are not shot.
No,
it's not
it doesn't matter.
justification.
Not justifiable.
He could be carrying a refrigerator out of that place.
I mean, the guy
you
runs.
still can't shoot him.
Right, the guy runs off with $4 retail price of chips, and you cannot shoot somebody for that. And that's, I think part of it is, I mean, some of the stores need more support, but I think also some of the stores need training in how do you deal with that?
You're right about
shooting people.
You're right about that, though. And we brought up Facebook, the worst of the social media platforms, several times this hour. But let me tell you something that happens over and over and over in my Facebook network. Okay, you and I live in the suburbs, right?
Yes.
We all know what happens in particularly affluent suburbs where people feel that they have bought their way into a secure environment.
The bubble.
Yeah, into the bubble. They call it Grosse Pointe the bubble, right? People park their cars on the street and they do not lock them, all right? And this happens year-round. It's happened as long as I've come here. Crews come through. Sometimes it's kind of a Fagin, driving a van with a bunch of younger kids with them. Sometimes it's just, single. Sometimes it's local kids do this. They go up and down the street and they just try door handles.
Sure.
And they know that if they find one that's unlocked, they're likely to find, a console full of change, a pair of $400 sunglasses that they can hawk somewhere. It's just little petty theft
Or
kind of
sometimes
stuff.
stuff they just
Right?
want.
Exactly. It's stuff they just want. Exactly. The $400 sunglasses.
The
Anyway.
Cartiers, that's
So then somebody will post something. Oh my God, they hit my street last night. Oh, what are we going to do? I guarantee
Lock your
you
door.
by the fourth comment on that, someone is going to say Smith and Wesson will take care of that.
Yeah.
And it's like you have to take training before you can get a concealed permit. And one of the things they teach you in training is, no, you're not allowed to shoot people who are stealing things from your car. You're not allowed to shoot people who are stealing things from your house. You can only shoot people if you have a legitimate fear that you are being menaced. And yet this is like, nobody ever says anything about this. Nobody ever says, that's a ridiculous statement to say. It's just like, yeah, I got my Smith and Wesson here, and I'm going to take care of that. And it's like,
do you really want to kill
BS.
somebody?
Well, it was
No,
like
that's the
can
whole
you
thing.
imagine
it was like
that?
in
you wanna
Rochester
shoot somebody?
Hills, where the student, some teenager knocks on the door. He's lost,
Right.
And the retired firefighter, comes out with a shotgun.
Yeah.
and
He's looking for
shoots
directions and fires at him.
at
Exactly.
the guy. I mean, it's like
Yeah, for knocking on the door. It's
yeah,
like
it happened to be he's a black teenager knocking on a white guy's home, and the white guy feels justification for pulling out a
right.
But then you've got the situation, too, where the fender bender happens at 2 o'clock in the morning. It looks like the two guys are getting out to talk to each other, and the one guy just clocks him.
Was
And
he driving though? Because he was in a group. That was a.
I'm not sure who was driving the car. It may have been his car, but either way.
Right. He clocked him, and then he
clocked-
and then
it looked
he knocked
like the
him
guy
down.
was dead before he fell. I mean,
he
just knocked
punched
him
him
cold.
in the head, and he fell, and then he kicked him in the head a few times, and he ends up being beaten to death. Over
Over
a
a
fender
fender
bender.
bender.
Exactly.
And-
That's
so
scary.
it is
very
scary.
I mean, I live in the city. I sometimes driving home late at night. I mean, you really
Right, but late at night and anywhere, not just Detroit, anywhere you've got the alcohol / crazy factor.
I'll drive. I don't know. It hasn't happened in a little while, but I would drive down the lodge sometimes. It might be 1 o'clock in the morning, and there'd be about 4 or 5 cars racing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, going at least 100 miles an hour and just almost clipping you.
Oh yeah,
It'd
or the
be
guys on the
scary.
motorcycles. Oh my god!
I don't recommend anybody go speeding on the lodge right now. Apparently, there's been a massive crackdown ever since we had me on the lodge with it, where they said they gave out like 75 tickets and a
Really?
whole bunch. One guy they caught going like 95 miles an hour. And I just know this: if you drive a Charger or a Challenger, right now, you are being watched.
Yeah, exactly. I saw. I came in 94 was closed, and I took my weekly trip to Eastern Market. And I came in on surface streets, and I was going down Gratiot. And all the way down Gratiot for like 2 or 3 miles, there are some suspiciously perfect circular rubber tire marks. So I think I have a feeling that when they were
94 with it now?
they relocated. No, not on 94 on Gratiot. We on Gratiot with it. So there you go.
What do you guys think about this woman who had her pageant title removed for being a MAGA person? Kathy Zhu,
Zhu.
student at the University of Michigan. She's a senior. she basically got a shout out from the president, which is maybe
Of
if you're a
course.
MAGA person, that what you wanted. But
Her
she got
next
stripped.
destination, Fox News.
Well,
she'll be
this
there.
is the
I'm
best
telling you what,
thing.
maybe that's what she wanted. She's like, maybe
Yeah.
some good things will come from me having
Right.
my pageant title
This
stripped
is
from me.
the best thing that ever happened to her. I don't care what anybody says. First of all, that pageant is not a good one. Come on, it's Miss Michigan World or something. I mean, it's like you want to be in Miss America, and the Miss Michigan America this year is fabulous. At least she was the one that I met her at the auto show. She's fantastic. She's the one who introduced herself at the pageant by saying, "From the state with 96% of the nation's fresh water, but none of it to drink."
Oh, that's good.
I'm Emily.
And she still
somebody. Yeah,
won.
right? She was no. Well, she'd already won the title. She didn't
Okay.
make the top 10, and this was at Miss America. Anyway, first of all, it's a stupid pageant. She's been stripped of her title. She's internet famous. She has been given an e-ticket on the Wingnut Welfare gravy train, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of her.
I have a feeling
yeah.
she's going to show up on the Blaze pretty
She's
soon.
not going to
which
miss
is,
that
you know,
tiara one
if you
bit.
haven't seen
Yeah.
the Blaze, that's
She's pretty.
Glenn Beck's network. It's
She's
so
young.
good.
She's a person of color. She's golden.
Well, it just
I covered the Miss America pageant. I know.
did you really?
Many years ago. Yeah.
Wow, that must have been
It
interesting.
was great. Atlantic City, baby.
Okay, what was another? Oh, you know what we didn't get to? This was just funny, and this goes back to Trump for just a second. But the fact that he was speaking at Turning Point USA, we're talking about young MAGA people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would be Turning Point USA, this conservative youth summit that was there. And the president's giving a speech, and for 80 seconds.
I thought it was 80 minutes.
No, it was 80 seconds.
Okay.
But it was
All
long
right.
before they figured out, because they had a changing background.
But
For 80 seconds, he was standing in front of a fake presidential seal, which was actually a mock-up of,
Yes.
it was basically of the Russian eagle, the double-headed eagle, and instead of holding the 13 arrows, it was holding 13 golf clubs. Instead of the olive branch in the other hand, or the other talon, it was holding a talon
wad of
full
cash.
of cash.
Yeah.
And then the motto is basically 45 is a puppet in
Right.
Spanish, which is also a knock about his immigration policies. And it was up there for a long time. And nobody knows exactly what happened. The only thing that the Turning Point people are saying is that we think one of our people just wasn't very smart, so they fired him.
That this absolutely stinks of they let the intern pull the graphics and they didn't check it is all I can say. I mean they didn't even look at it probably. Oh yeah, it's roughly
I like it. I like it. I'm kind of surprised that more stuff like that isn't happening. I'm doubly surprised that for all the shots that he's taken at the CIA and the NSA and stuff like that, they aren't leaking out more stuff about him. And maybe they are about Trump. Yeah.
Huh.
Well,
These are professionals.
Gotta keep your powder
Well,
Yeah.
they're human beings too.
Okay.
They're human beings who have jobs, who have pride in their agencies, and when the president's trashing them,
Yeah.
they
Well, yeah,
tend,
that's true.
There's always some sneak. Look, CIA. There's some sneaky guys there.
Yeah, they're spies.
They're spies. So
how about this? We've only got a couple of minutes left, and I did want to get to this. There's actual debate about a graduated income tax here in Michigan as a way to potentially pay for the roads instead of a gas tax, which a lot of people suggest is regressive.
That is very interesting.
And that the Republicans may actually sign on to this thing to get a deal done and realize that, well, maybe some of those folks, like the DeVosses of the world who make this place their home, can afford to pay a little bit more than they are in state income taxes. A graduated income tax is a way to fix the roads. Yay, nay? At least something worth talking about?
I think it's absolutely.
What we're doing now doesn't cut it.
it's
You have to
certainly
put
worth-
everything on the table.
Yeah, it's worth talking about. I don't know why sales tax. Add another penny or two to the sales tax if that wouldn't.
Our sales
work.
tax is generally on the low side nationally. I think our
It's like
benchmark.
what is it? 8 cents
No,
a dollar. or
six.
something?
It's like 6.6, but and then or some combination. This is what I would favor because the other less spoken of road problem that we have here is it's not just the $2 billion we need a year to fix like the state highways. Have you driven on your local roads lately? I mean, they're terrible. So I went out to Waterford Township on Sunday. I thought I was going to lose a tire. Maybe like a graduated income tax and then a local option tax for municipalities or local units of government that need to.
Well, good luck running on that platform
Yeah,
in
I
your
know.
town.
I
I would like
realize
to
that.
raise your taxes.
Well, this is the thing.
Thank you for your candidacy,
we act as
Mr.
though
Derringer. You're
nothing. I
done.
know, but we act as though everything is free in this country, and there's no need to pay more for it. So, for 40 years, one party has run on the no new taxes, cut taxes, starve government in the drown it in the bathtub, whatever. And we're
Starve the
paying the
beast.
price now. Now we have crappy schools, we have crappy infrastructure. Wait until the toilets start overflowing. Then you're going to have some problems.
All right, a couple other things I want to get to. Spirit Plaza.
On
Spirit
again,
Plaza, right
off
here,
again.
just about a block away from us here in the lovely studios of Deadline Detroit. Spirit Plaza, which is basically the block between Larned and Jefferson on Woodward. They've just blocked it off right in front of the Spirit of Detroit statue, close to the fist.
Hence the name.
Yes, there you go. First, it was a 4-4 vote to whether to keep it going. Then Andre Spivey apparently came back from vacation and said, no, we're going to keep it. It is here to stay. I've adjusted. I don't really care. I mean, there's a lot of people that are really upset about this and a lot of people who,
It's a different downtown than it was 10 years ago. I think it can be accommodated.
Yeah,
I don't know. What do you think?
I like it. I mean, generally.
As long as the food trucks are there, Alan's in favor.
Yeah, exactly. But also, I like the idea of more people walking, that pedestrians have a little bit of...
right. It can be, I mean, given how long the cold season lasts in Detroit, it can... But there's no way to open it and then close it again.
It's not that.
It's not that
I mean,
bad.
you go, instead of, you're heading to Jefferson, so you make a left on whatever, Larned, and you...
I mean, the trend nationwide, worldwide, is to make your central cities more pedestrian friendly, more bike friendly,
scooter friendly.
Yeah, scooter
Did you see
friendly.
the picture I posted the other day?
I
the
did
scooter
see it.
Graveyard?
It really ticked
There were
me
at
off.
least 15 in that picture, all in front of the Starbucks over there, just right by Campus Martius, and you could barely walk by on the sidewalk.
And with only circumstantial evidence, I am blaming Quicken employees. There were
Orange Shirt Day down
thousands
here.
and thousands and thousands of them downtown that day for
Best
Orange Shirt
quarter
Day.
ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Wearing
And that's
T-shirts. Best quarter ever.
yeah. So
Well, I don't blame them. They were
when
just
I
using
end
it.
my scooter rides, I don't take a lot of them, but I have the app. And when I end my scooter rides, it says take a picture of your bird parked out of the traffic way. And I always do.
Do they
but
give you a little bonus if you do that? or
They
something?
should, but they don't. Are you kidding?
I mean,
These
if they
people?
could get
Come
like
on.
10 cents off for good behavior, that's like,
I
Have,
do
like
have
10
you,
cents
have
a minute
you
or something?
ridden a scooter?
I have not. I walk.
I have.
Yeah.
I walk. I
I'm
need the
very
exercise.
careful. I go very slow. I go. Yeah, I'm just like.
All right,
I'm,
quick.
I'm an old
two,
lady.
two other things I want to get to.
Okay.
Kid Rock selling his house over on Dwight, which is right by the Manoogian Mansion, the other end of the block from the Manoogian.
It's Detroit house.
His Detroit house. We had something on Deadline Detroit about that this week,
Yes,
and
we
Nancy,
did.
wonderfully done, I thought. But some of the furnishings were interesting, but it clearly looked like he built this to be sort of a reception/party house.
Yeah, I think so too.
For
Yeah,
people, but,
the logo of his company, of his clothing company, on every
shade.
what window shade was a bit much. Here's the thing: whenever you see a real estate listing, particularly for a high-end house like that, you always have to account that some of it was staged. Because this is a business now. These people come around and they redecorate your house just for sales. They take out most of the furniture out. It's super clean. They paint everything neutral. However, there were some very personal touches that kind of set. I mean, and there's something about looking at the inside of somebody's house that's almost too intimate. It's almost like getting into bed with them. It's so intimate, and so like you go to the.
But how many people go to open houses just for that reason? They have no intention
Exactly.
of buying
It's
these
very
places.
voyeuristic.
I want to see what kind of furniture they got.
I feel voyeuristic going to the supermarket, and the person in front of you, you're like, oh, you eat ham.
Buy Hot Pockets?
Oh,
Wow,
you
man,
don't care about
the
nitrates.
pillow- the
Oh my
pillow
God, look
shams-
at that.
The pillow shams in the master bedroom had his initials on.
I know.
Which I just think
he
is
just does not strike
hilarious.
me as a monogram guy at all, right? That just didn't seem to work. And it wasn't KR. It was Bob Ritchie.
No, it was
RJ
RJR.
or something like that.
Oh my God.
It's like when I go to the grocery store
Yeah.
during Passover, and I buy gefilte fish, baki matzah. I'm like, I want to go. Okay, yeah, I'm Jewish. All right, you know that now.
Okay, so you just brought up gefilte fish. And so we
Yes.
got to end with this one because I'm still trying to figure out how this guy's going to navigate this going forward. There's this Israeli burger chain. Guy wanted to open up in Dearborn. Apparently he's getting death threats. He's not even serving, like, it's burgers.
Yeah.
Right.
Apparently he's just a franchisee. He's a guy from Lebanon, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
He's American Lebanese.
Yeah, and so he just like, hey, I got a good deal on this franchise. I want to open it up.
Right.
Now he's kind of stuck
Yeah.
because the community.
He's got
won't have
two
it.
other ones. I think one in Royal Oak and maybe.
I mean,
Dearborn doesn't want that stuff, I guess.
Yeah,
At
well,
least
guess
part of
what?
Dearborn.
Guess what?
East Dearborn.
Acceptance goes every way.
Yeah.
It seems to me that this is something that needs to be addressed.
Israel
and-
is it's a very emotional issue.
I
there.
get that,
if
but
you
it's
go,
just a business.
Yeah, I know, but it's a very
It is.
people.
No, you're right.
I mean, look, people are trying to organize boycotts against Israel. And
Can
stuff
we
like
sit
that.
down at the table of brotherhood and
Yeah.
in your inimitable phrase,
I mean, you
discuss the two patty solution.
That was pretty good, wasn't it? The two patty solution.
giving away our.
I came up with that yesterday. But come on,
I
now.
understand.
It's a restaurant.
But
it's a good burger. It's not.
You're right.
Being Jewish, I understand. I mean, Israel is such a Israel Palestine is such a volatile issue there, and when people it's just one of those things. It's the wrong.
And you meet people, you'll still say, like, where did you immigrate from? Right. And at least East Jordan, and a lot of them will say Palestine. I mean, they don't say the West Bank or whatever. They say Palestine.
Oh, I'm Palestinian.
Yeah.
Right. Try to open a Jewish deli over on Michigan Avenue and see how that goes.
Well, okay.
But no, you're right. It's terrible.
It's bad. I mean, it's indicative of
death threats over hamburgers.
Something worldwide. It's just
unless they're
terrible.
badly cooked.
Well, one last shout out to end the week. Avern Cohen's 95th birthday.
Yeah.
Judge Avern Cohen, the guy still works a full docket every week.
Yep.
An amazing individual and somebody who's been just a lion of the legal profession in this city for a long time.
Clearly, one of the brighter judges in that building, and I think he's offered a lot of advice and mentoring to other judges. And at his birthday party, which I attended over in the courthouse. On Tuesday, some judges said, you made me a better judge, and he's extremely well read, and he's he can have sometimes a little bit of a loud voice here on the bench, and but he's actually a very passionate and reasonable sentencer. He's not somebody who's going to give a ridiculous sentence just because he wants to look tough. I mean, he gives what is necessary, but he doesn't go beyond that.
Look how many great federal judges have served in that building, and think that we are doing right now in Washington, D.C., thanks to Mitch McConnell, is filling up the federal judiciary ranks with...
Well, I was going to go out on a happy note.
Okay.
but I love the fact, I just want to do this. Avern Cohen, one of my favorite things about him is he always refers to himself not as a judge, but as a med school dropout, because he's clearly disappointed his mother at some point. You're dropping out of medical school, Avern.
My son's a not doctor.
Well, his father was a lawyer. I think maybe he wanted to take a different path, but he ended up. But he's got a great legal mind. He really loves the legal system. Here it is at 95.
The guy was appointed back in 1979 to the federal bench by Jimmy Carter, which
his name has been a character in 2 Elmore Leonard novels too. Yeah, they were friends.
And just to say one other thing, I mean, he was like, when I did fundraisers at WDET, and we would read the names of the people who were in there, he was almost always the very first person to donate during my morning show when I was on the morning. Here's the Avern Cohen, and always a very generous gift. Good fan of NPR, so says something about his character.
I used to, when I was at the Detroit News, I covered the federal courthouse, and that's where I first got to know him. And so I used to sometimes do an imitation of him while he was gone. And one time I was in the chambers there doing an imitation, and somebody in the chamber next door was like, "Oh my God, I thought Judge Cohen was gone."
I'm like, "That's outrageous. You have got to learn." And with that, thank you, Rich Little. We appreciate that very much. Actually, that would be Alan Lengel, Nancy Derringer. I'm Craig Fahle. Michael Lucido engineered our broadcast today. We appreciate it. And hey, if you like this, tell it, share it. Tell your friends that we do this every Friday. You can get the podcast version anywhere you get podcasts. And, of course, you'll also find it at DeadlineDetroit.com. Check it out for all your news. We certainly do appreciate it. Also, The Zip coming out a little bit later today on Deadline TV. Always fun. Just a little 5-minute or so comedy take on the news. What do you got?
I was going to say, if I could steal a line from Jeff Goldblum from last night, thanks for coming by and drive home carefully.
Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday. Hey, the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization doing great stuff all around the state.